Welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, and today I'll be talking about the Empress. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. The best way to support the podcast right now is to check out my new Patreon. Supporting me there will give you access to upcoming podcast episode topics, digital downloads I've created, and monthly tarot hangouts. Link will be in the show notes to check that out. You can also always go to my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot. If you ever want to see the images of the cards I pulled today that I talk about, or any other links or show note information as well. All right, so welcome to the main discussion and to season 2 of the podcast. In the first season, I introduced tarot through talking about oracle versus tarot cards, myths of tarot, how to find a deck, reading for yourself versus others, and much more. In season 2, we're going through the first 13 cards of the major arcana, one per episode, and today I'm talking about the Empress. So the number associated with the Empress card is 3. The Empress is usually depicted somewhat sensually, I would say, often as a woman seated on a throne. She often has like a staff with an orb on top or a scepter. Usually there's a shield somewhere in the image and then a symbol of Venus. When I was thinking about sort of different depictions of the Empress, I was really thinking about Glinda from The Wizard of Oz or Wicked, especially with that sort of scepter. Like she has a staff with a thing on top. There's also just this like certain energy or like effervescence of the Empress, and that was just sort of a recent thing I was thinking about. The other thing that really came to mind was I recently read A Fate Inked in Blood, a book by Danielle L. Jensen, where Freya is a main character, and the story begins right before she finds out that she is a fated one, chosen by the gods to be a shield maiden, which will unite others. And just that like shield in the image, and just the sort of like there's a femininity and sensuality, but also this, again, sort of like purpose really made me think of like the shield maiden from like Freya in Norse mythology. So depictions in the decks that I actually have, in the Goddess of Love tarot deck, this card, the Empress, is depicted as the goddess Venus. So in the image, she's shown with 2 cherubs above her. She's like standing, lifting up her long, luscious hair. There's a lot of water. There's dolphins jumping. Honestly, it was giving very like mermaid vibes. She kind of looks like she's standing on a rock alongside the ocean. There was a heart with a symbol for like women or females and Venus on it. And then the roses and pink flowers sort of scattered and gathered all along her feet. Um, in my Anima Mundi deck that I like to use, this deck depicts a lot of animals and sometimes other aspects of nature. And in this one, the Empress is depicted as a strong, like purple peony. It takes up a large part of the image of the card, which I think is why I chose the word strong. It's like a deep purple color. And again, if you ever want to see the cards I'm talking about, you can go to my website where I put those. So in the Anima Mundi deck, when she's being depicted as a peony, the flower, it talks about that in Chinese culture, the peony is a symbol of fertility and considered the king of flowers. The Empress is very like Mother Earth, provider, feminine figure. She tells you to get in touch with your sensual side. It's also about connecting with nature, spending time outside, and connecting with others as well. And something that was coming up for me when I was thinking about this was I remember a time when I was feeling really disconnected, and I sort of jumped to the conclusion that I needed to like create a group in my business to like feel connected or like have this big offer, that I was feeling disconnected from people. And a friend of mine and mentor told me that that could be true, but like, what if I started and connected with nature and what's around me to see how that felt and sort of grounding in that presence? And that maybe what I was missing was this connection to Mother Earth or Gaia, and not just to other people. Other people are lovely and wonderful, but there's a lot of creatures on Earth. And yeah, just sort of connecting with that. And that person's Amanda. You can find her at Live Your Podcast Life on Instagram. Um, I also went to graduate school from 2019 to 2021 to become a licensed marriage and family therapist, and therefore I spent a lot of that time in lockdown. And I remember like so much time spent on my computer between classes and homework and seeing clients virtually because I wasn't seeing clients in person at the time, and I actually still don't. And I took to spending as much time outside as I could, even if that was just like on my 10-minute breaks between classes and clients. And I guess sort of pulling out this theme, like I think that we are part of nature and nature is part of us. And it's nice to get out into parks or away from cities when you have the time, but just spending time outside, walking around in your neighborhood, sitting in your backyard or your patio or deck, or even just with the window open when weather permits, can help you feel more connected to the earth at large. And I feel like the Empress calls us to do so. So the Empress, I sort of think of as like, again, Mother Earth, Gaia, Venus, nature, all of these aspects embodied. Within the tarot guidebook for this deck, the Anima Mundi deck, it talks about that there is abundance around you, and sometimes you just have to look around to find it. The Empress, being a provider, teaches us that we can provide for others and provide for ourselves. You don't have to wait on anything or anyone else to do that. That isn't to say that allowing others to support us is bad. It's just that everything we need is already here on this planet, and we should take great care to treat it that way. From the guidebook on the Goddess of Love tarot deck, I pulled kind of two quotes from there. She talks about the Venus sings of pleasure as sustenance, of desire as a guiding force, and of beauty as a language of the divine. This card is a manifestation of light and body led guidance that leads us to pleasure and connection. And it talks about that when the Empress appears, remember to indulge in whatever connects you to the Venusian current. So maybe that's draping yourself in delicious fabrics, kissing slowly, basking in nature, buying yourself flowers, or moving your body as you breathe and make sounds. And the Empress really asks you to tap into the pleasure that's all around you. I just really think of like somatic experiences, things where we're not just up in our head thinking about things or trying to process things, but we're also tapping into the rest of our body and being present in that space and connecting with ourselves and trying to be in tune with what our body needs. And I'm really getting the message within this that it's time to treat your pleasure as a priority even when society tells us we shouldn't. As long as it's within the bounds of safety and consent, why not do what you desire? And the Empress really encourages us to embrace pleasure today instead of waiting until tomorrow, until a better time, or until we have all our work done, or this and that. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. And again, some of the themes that I'm thinking about as I pull a card are: what pleasures have you been denying yourself? What is one way you can indulge in what you desire? And what is your body leading you to do today? Interesting. Okay, so today I'm pulling from the Sasarai Lito Tarot deck by Stasia Barrington. And I pulled the Ace of Swords, which I guess I just find interesting since I think of the Empress as such a embodied card, sort of in the body, but swords are usually associated with sort of air, intellect, a little bit of that headiness. So within this deck, it talks about the Ace of Swords stands for truth, objectivity, and seeing through illusions or overcoming obstacles. So this particular card shows a sword, upright, strong, and clear, slicing through a dark fog to reveal a beautiful dawn and dusk sky. Again, a lot of the card visibly is very dark, and then there's this sort of like cutout in the middle. The sword is dispelling dualistic black and white thinking and exposing subtle shades and colors. It's asking us to set aside assumptions and gut feelings to cut towards what is underneath. This card is seeking justice, facing problems, and using critical reasoning to stand up for a cause. And I guess when I'm thinking about this in the context of pleasure and the Empress and what sort of one way we can indulge in what we desire today, I'm thinking about, again, sort of using our reasoning of the fact that we only live once, YOLO, to really sort of ground us in the fact that treating our body well and emphasizing and thinking about pleasure and desire and what brings us joy is part of what makes it so fun to be a human, right? There's so many things that aren't very fun, and sometimes require us to have a lot of fortitude or strength, right? This card also calls to that. Um, but it says sort of get rid of that black and white thinking, right? Don't think about it as like there's work and there's play, and they're two separate things, and you can only play if you've already worked, right? How can you bring playfulness into your work environment? How can you bring creativity into the things that you have to do? Are there ways that you can gamify your tasks? Are there things that bring you joy? Or again, if you have to make a to-do list, can you make it on fun paper? Like if you have to um, read a book for grad school, do it outside. Because these are just some things that I think of that come to mind, but sort of use that critical reasoning and our right ability to get things done, but also try to embrace, like, again, the joy and pleasures of life and embody the Empress instead of just waiting for the situation to get better or waiting for the perfect moment or the particular sign you might be waiting for. Maybe it's saying that today, right, do what you can. Maybe we can't do it all, but do what brings you joy today, even if it's just for 5 minutes, right? Maybe it's some deep breathing. Maybe it's going, I don't know, whatever it is for you, eating a little bit of chocolate, reading your book for 5 minutes before bed, right? Like even in small moments, we can find that sensuality and pleasure and joy and just lean into that. And sometimes when we do that, it allows us to find either even greater avenues by which to do so, right? Maybe it makes it a little bit easier to tomorrow do 6 minutes of something. I recently got a calendar, and I like getting a calendar every year to have up. For just sort of vacation plans or birthdays, things on the calendar that I put up in our home. And I also love coloring. And I found a calendar that you get to color a page for every month. And I was like, this is great. It's a creativity project. It's pretty. I get to pick colors for the month. Even if I don't color at all in the rest of my time that month, I know that when I turn the page to next month, it's going to encourage me to color, which for me is something that brings me a lot of pleasure and joy. And so, yeah, that's, I guess, just one small example. Yeah, so if you ever want to find the links for the tarot decks that I use, those will be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them or just see the image of the card that I pulled today that I talked about. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. All right, see you soon. Bye bye.